In the spring of 2020, the comedy industry changed forever.
Hi, everyone.
Today, I'm ordering the mandatory closure of all non-essential workplaces in the province of Ontario.
We are all still living in an emergency. COVID-19 is here and is going to keep being here.
Guys, give it up for Mitch. I was not expecting you people to be here tonight. Holy fuck.
Today, Alberta's government is announcing bold and targeted new measures.
Manitoba and the world are navigating through an unprecedented health and economic situation with COVID-19.
I was just sitting here like everybody, and then they went, hey, there's this thing that's going to kill you, so you can't go out anymore. And then I thought, well, that might affect comedy. And sure enough, it did.
When the pandemic hit, I think we were all taken aback and trying to convince ourselves that this would be a temporary thing.
And that's it. The next day, the world exploded. We were done. There was no shows, there was no stages, couldn't leave our house. So to go from that high to zero, like that hurt a lot of people.
Strombo comes on, we start getting, I start booking some pretty good interviews, and then basically right before those interviews were recorded, the pandemic hits and I had to cancel everything.
I had a number of shows booked in March, towards the end of March, and those are all gone. And I remember just hoping that it was only going to be 30 days, so things that I had in April were still going to happen. Things that I had in May were still going to happen. But as time went on, and the quarantine just extended, those just dried up. Like everything came to a screeching halt.
Halting Gotland, my full Indigenous comedy show that was just getting off the ground. That really struck a chord in my heart, because we were going to go lots of places. All over Canada, the United States.
For us, it was March 13th out here on the east coast of Canada. And so we had gigs set up in Moncton, all throughout the whole east coast. And it was just shut down right then and there, right cold, right hard.
The Monday after the shutdown, like the Monday that it was decided everything's gonna be shut down for the original 2 weeks, I was in California at that time and had been living out there for 3 months, and we had tons of shows. Immediately on that Monday, I think it was something like 40 shows just boom, got like canceled, or we will reschedule, but we have no idea when. And since then, some of those venues have actually gone out of business, so those won't even come back.
With the case numbers rising, we had to cancel the comedy event just for perspective, safety, and the lack of interest.
Cities all across Canada remained in a state of emergency, and with bars closed and nowhere to perform, the comedy industry came to a standstill. No one knew what to expect for the future of comedy.
When I started in 1976, there really wasn't any comedy of the kind that we think of. It was sketch comedy. There was very little stand-up. And I was working at a place called Harbourfront at the time. But it was the only place that you could see comedy like that. And when I got fired from Harbourfront, as we all did, 2 years later, all the comics that I'd become friends with said, well, now what do I do? And that's when I went to the board of a community center and said, hey, can I have Wednesday nights in your basement?
You're going to hear a lot of that name. Derek Edwards in the weeks to come. He just killed 8 kids. Mr. Derek Edwards. Well, later on tonight, of course, we watch.
We're doing very different kinds of comedy than what was generally considered to be Canadian comedy, which was safe, small town, kind of rural, kind of hoser-ish. It was more personal, kind of uncensored, a bit taboo. This is stuff that was already being done in the States for about 10 years, and it had finally caught up in Canada.
Fucked up the joke, because some weird things happening over here on my left.
That's your right.
I'm booting the guy out.
That's your right.
Excellent, kicking the guy out. I love seeing guys get kicked out. I do my little camera thing.
So I used to hang up posters with Howie Wagman saying the club is coming and you got to come to see the new comedy club.
We opened up here in 1984, which is now we're in 36 years in. And the biggest names that come out of here are Jeremy Hotz, Norm MacDonald, Mike MacDonald, who else? John Doerr, who still comes back to play here. Actually, they all come back. Tom Green, they all come back and play here.
Hi, I'm Tom Green, and I started doing stand-up comedy on amateur night at YUK'S, and it got me to where I am today, doing this commercial for YUK'S. All of the best Canadian comedians started at YUK'S: Jim Carrey, Howie Mandel, Norm MacDonald, Russell Peters. They started at YUK'S. Come to YUK'S tonight, see tomorrow's stars today. Come on down to YUK'S. It doesn't get any better than YUK'S. Come to YUK'S. I'm Tom Green for YUK'S.
When YUK'S started in Ottawa, it was really popular. Like, it was a new thing, so everybody went, and there were like, you know, they would line up in front of the place, and it was really popular. And then, so I was the opening act along with a couple of other guys, and we were on every night, right? Every show, like one of these three guys. And the crowd was the same crowd that came back all the time. So they would like, when they introduced you, they'd seen you so many times, you would hear this from the crowd. Oh, not this guy again. Shit like that all the time. So we all heard it, you know?
And people had gotten more interested in comedy, and we had a bigger roster to work with. And people were interested. There was a local talent pool, which had never existed before. So Jeremy Hotz being one of them. Jeremy Hotz was an amateur at this point.
I get a little angry. I go to a psychiatrist now. She hates my guts. She says I suffer from delusions of sexual superiority. She just wants to do me.
Oh man, 25 years ago was the competition. Back then it was called the Search for Canada's Funniest New Comic, and it was a competition based only through YUK'S. And every city had a YUK'S, so they would have these people compete. So I skipped the setup and I went straight to doing a performance, and there were 12 people on that night, and I didn't make the top 10.
Well, Ottawa is, in my opinion, the best city to start comedy in. And you get to work with all of the headliners that like come through the YUK'S or the Absolute circuit. So you are meeting all the people in the industry, so that if you ever choose to come to Toronto or you choose to go to Vancouver or Montreal or whatever, it's like you already know people. The audiences in Ottawa are like absolutely fantastic. And as you're coming up as a comedian, it's like you really want that safety blanket to like nurture your ego.
Oh, Eminem's music went downhill when he changed his label and when he quit drugs. And I'm like, no. Eminem's music went downhill when he forgave his mother.
With us, we know big household native names within our community, such as Charlie Hill, who has who's passed, and we have Candy Palmater, Don Burnstick, and Howie Miller. And in Ottawa, we have our very own Don Kelly, who's been doing it for about 20 odd years, and he is a mentor to all Indigenous comedians coming up.
Folks, my next guest tonight is a Canadian comedian making his network television debut. Please welcome Graham Kay.
I remember I had like a meeting with Mark Breslin at YUK'S, and he was like, no, we're not looking for anybody new. And I was like, I'll make your business better. I'll make you more money. You said that to other people, and you didn't, and and you've said this in the past and hired other people. So I know that there's always room for somebody who's better than what you have. And I was like very cocky.
I started stand-up comedy back in the early 90s, so about 1991. And I grew up in Northern Ontario, in North Bay, and I moved to Ottawa and went to Ottawa U and started going to watch some amateur comedy over at YUK'S with Howard there.
I wanted to do comedy, I guess, from basically when I was in high school. I went to like an all-Asian school, and I got picked on by Chinese kids a lot. You know, they would be like, "You are fat guaylo, you're stupid fat."
You know, Chinese kids made fun of me all the time. It's like, Baba Nindu is homework, Baba Nindu is homework,
and then I just kind of became a class clown, and I sort of won them over by making fun of teachers and just being natural with voices and accents and stuff like that, even mocking their accent. Like, then all of a sudden I just felt like I had this talent for voices and accents, and that just elation of just people, you know, just like even winning over like school bullies.
Scary, eh? Did you get one like that with like a full body thing, or really? Like you're right in there. And here at the hospital up here, yeah, pretty wild ride. So they put you in, like you're lying down on this table, right? They gotta put you in this like, I don't know, like a giant toilet paper roll or something like that, right? And they put this little bag on your head, right? A little shower cap. And I asked the girl, I said, "Why do I have to put the shower cap on?" She said, "So your hair won't get in your eyes."
Next thing you know, 20 years goes by, and at the age of 40, I had a brain tumor. And, you know, it was really close. It was eye-opening. You look at life a little bit differently. And I just kind of said, I want to try out and do things that I always wanted to do, that I always wanted to continue doing. And one night I was watching NBC's Last Comic Standing, and Jerry D was on it. And I said to my wife, I said, one day I want to work with that guy. And my wife said, "You haven't done stand-up in like 20 years. How are you going to do stand-up with this dude from NBC?" I said, "He's Canadian. We all work together."
I started doing street performing for a number of years at this juggling comedy escape show that I performed all around the world. And I was doing a couple open mics here and there, but I was mainly street performing was kind of my main thing.
Over the head, keep it going, under the leg. Hello? Hi, how are you doing? I'm doing fine. Look, I thought I told you once. I told you twice, never to tell us again. Can't you just let us live alone together? I love him, he loves me. Can't you just let us...
I chased this Australian acrobat, and she's like, "Yeah, come meet me in Australia." And then as soon as I got there, we had sex once, and then she goes, "Yeah, I'm just not feeling it, mate. Get fucked." And then I was like, shit. And I was heartbroken. But I was kind of dabbling in stand-up, but I was still mainly doing street performing. This was kind of a defining moment. I managed to get my first paid gig. And at that point, I had maybe 10 or 15 minutes of stand-up material. It was like 2002. And basically, just for like 10 minutes, I just talked about getting dumped by this girl, making fun of the Australian accent, just making fun of her, just saying what shitty people Australians are and how shitty their women are. And I just killed, and I just felt like, oh my God. So it went from like heartbreak to just like this euphoria of acceptance from strangers.
So yeah, I do have a physical disability. It's actually a condition from birth called multiple congenital musculoskeletal abnormalities, which for those of you who do not speak Latin, is actually the medical term for slightly fucked up.
I think Canada definitely punches above its weight in terms of comedic talent. If you look at, John Candy, Canadian, Norm MacDonald, right here in Ottawa.
Shut the fuck up, man. We gotta do some thing here. Okay. No, that's very nice of you knowing my name.
No problem, Norm.
Okay, excellent. So, you ever get a lottery ticket?
After weeks of being in lockdown, bars and clubs finally reopened, and comedians rushed out to perform.
No, get that EI. Yes! Get excited for your big day? Your hand's wet. It's PIERRE! Yeah.
Clubs faced many restrictions and had limited capacity to offer to customers.
We did everything we were told to do and then some. And we were praised for well, you can see behind me, we've got the plexiglass shield. We were socially distanced, all the tables we kept to our capacity, which is 1/3 of our regular capacity. Virtually no way to make money. I mean, but we care about the art, and we care about what we're doing. We care about the comics and the community, and, you know, just being open was important to us.
We did one show where there was plexiglass in front of the stage, which did not affect anybody watching, but from the stage looking out, because of the lights, you're reflected onto the glass. So essentially you can't see people in the audience. You're looking at yourself and kind of doing stand-up to yourself. And so that really, really impacted that show. That was a bit of a disaster.
There were comics I'd asked to do my show like the last couple of months, and they were just like, I just don't really feel you know, and I totally understand. I get it, right?
All the way from Cornwall up to 138 tonight, the very funny Dan Allaire, everyone!
For a comic to turn down a spot, like that means something, because this isn't true to a performer, but like we generally tend to be very like, never turn down a spot as a spot. Somebody offers you a spot, you take it. You know, like guys will drive 3 hours and not even get paid. They do it all the time.
I was able to, because of the pandemic and having a Canadian passport, being a dual citizen now, I was able to come to Canada, quarantine for 2 weeks, and get out and do some shows for 100 people. In socially distanced environments, in clubs that I hadn't played in Canada. Well, I'd never played Rumors, and I'd never played the West Edmonton Mall one. So I got to do these small shows for my fans up close, which was really cool, you know? And I got to do that. But at the same time, it was different than performing for 2,500 people. So, you know, it's good for the fans, but for the performer, it's night and day, you know?
I found my first gray pubic hair. And I was disgusted when I realized it wasn't mine. I gotta start dating younger women.
Critics are calling the freedom of comedy protest offensive, illegal, irresponsible, not funny, wrong, ill-advised, a racist in a park. And the thing is, they're right.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you guys ready for a bit of a comedy show or what? It's crazy. Some good shit.
You all have COVID. Well, my show was the first in, like I said, North America, but it was definitely the first in Toronto, June 5th. And before that, people were afraid to do comedy shows. They were afraid to do it in somebody's backyard. They were afraid to do it in somebody's house. They were afraid to do it at a bar outside, which was semi-allowed at the time. I did my show and I got some flack for it. You know, I made fun of. I make fun of everything. I made fun of BLM. I made fun of kind of the woke movement that kind of happened during COVID.
Just got a $1,100 ticket from a grown man with braces, everybody. So
once my show started, maybe a month after that, there was more shows in Toronto. There were shows in people's backyards. There were people started calling bars and doing shows there again.
Thank you for coming to the park and paying nothing.
Why won't you love me?
We started experimenting with some outdoor shows, and we did some really great outdoor shows. And I think that this year we're going to continue to do outdoor shows in the summer, even if they let us open up our clubs. We're looking for some interesting venues. I'm not talking about drive-in shows. We did a couple of those. We sold some of those. And they were an interesting novelty. You haven't really lived until you've been honked at. It was like being in Disney's Cars 3 or something. It was just bizarre, and it's a great story to tell, but it isn't the way you really want to do comedy.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you've ever been to Ottawa, the rough area? Like in Toronto, the rough area, they say it's Scarborough.
You know, you could perform in someone's backyard. I performed in someone's garden. I performed in a park. I performed on a boat. And I performed at a drive-in in front of a bunch of minivans by the sea. Like, honey, if there is stage time, like, bitch, I am there.
I was fortunate that I was actually able to do a bit of street performing here in the summer at English Bay by the beach. There was a sort of this grassy knoll area at the beachfront, and it's a famous local spot for street performing in the summer. So we were able to do some shows, and it was kind of bittersweet because I was able to make a bit extra money, but it was still like not nearly as good as it used to be because there's no tourism and the social distancing aspect and everybody spread out and the paranoia of COVID and all that stuff. So it wasn't as good, but it was still better than nothing.
And we did karaoke after the shows on the weekends, which we can't do anymore because you can't be spitting on microphones and sharing microphones and hugging and kissing and dancing because you can't do that. But comics they could share. You could just hand the mic to the next guy, and you didn't have to worry about distancing and all of that. I mean, you can't regulate stand-up comedy to that degree and make it what it should be, right?
With summer coming to an end, many bars and clubs face going out of business, and there's not enough stage time to go around. With winter fast approaching and case numbers still rising, people begin to worry about the second wave and what it may do to the comedy industry.
I've been thinking about this a lot. I think that this whole COVID thing, the longer it goes on, we're going to see kind of a reset for everything. I've seen people theorizing that this is going to be the great equalizer for indie comedy versus the standard club comedy, which has been around forever. But I think we're going to see a lot of venues that host indie comedy close, or we're going to see a lot of comedy clubs close, because if we're being honest, comedy clubs in Canada, that's not a lucrative business for the most part for a lot of people. That's a hard business. That's a labor of love.
My very clever partner, Dan Shields, feels that this is a paradigm shift, which it is. And over the course of time, nobody knows how long that will be. It's going to evolve. It's going to adjust, and it will come out even stronger after that's all over. But if that's a year, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know what that's going to look like. I just hope I'm around for it.
I think we're just reaching a paradigm shift in the industry, and I think those of us in management have to understand that maybe the club days are over for the foreseeable future. So we have to figure out ways to market our comics, to create a buzz around our comics, and try and blow them up in a very positive way.
It's gonna be more online. I think stand-up might die, honestly.
It's taken away comedians' ability to even be critical of what's happening in our society right now, which is basically it's collapsing. Our culture is collapsing. The culture of going out, watching comedy shows, going to nightclubs, going out to dinner.
We've been very fortunate and lucky that we've had quite a few sellouts still, so there has been that max. But certainly when we first started coming back, like early September, we were seeing 20, 25, maybe 30 people in places where we would normally have 200 to 300.
Sir, welcome back from the safari. Glad to have you here. I like your style, sir. I like everything that you've done. You've worn the very short, tight shorts that you've got. This is a big night for you, sir. That's what I'm saying. You put a lot of effort. Not everybody put the effort in. This guy threw a hoodie on and he was fine with that. But you, sir, went to your closet, your drawer. You probably took out a baggy pair of shorts. And you're like, not for this. No. This is the first time I've been out in months. I'm putting something tight. I'm letting the balls show off.
I work with YUK'S, and I'm one of their on-tour agents and one of their comics. And we pride ourselves on having like a huge roster from across Canada that we can use. So for us, that was immediately the end of that concept, that idea that we can use comics from Toronto, comics from out west, a lot of our favorite comics that, that come here to perform and that our amateurs take a look at and get better from. So we had to reevaluate our plan moving forward.
This is going to go on at least another year, 2 years before things are back to normal. And even then things start getting back to normal, as long as things like social distancing are in place, that's going to severely limit what's available for comedy venue-wise, what comedy clubs and venues can do in terms of making money.
I saw an ad for LASIK eye surgery, so I guess I'm good.
Everyone having a good done with quarantine, huh? We're back out in the world. We're smashing again. You probably never stopped. You were just like, I'm installing all the apps. Right? No?
I don't know about you guys, but when the government one day out of the blue just gets on the old microphone there and says, hey, I don't want to interrupt whatever you guys are up to there, but we might all die, And then the very next day, they get back on the same microphone and they come at you with, we forgot to mention the other day there that we also don't want you guys to have any sex while we wait to see if we all die. Now, I don't know about you guys.
Since comedy clubs and bars are still closed in many of the major cities, comedians start to travel to the smaller towns to get stage time. Being well known for its nightlife, Kingston becomes a hot spot for comedians.
Pierre or Justin? Who gives a shit?
We call him Daddy Trudeau. Okay, well, that's not going to do it.
Unbelievable.
You go ahead.
I'm not going to continue after she just called my leader Daddy. Explain yourself, young lady.
Trevor's back. Trevor's back.
Oh, hi there. Didn't see you there.
With everyone still staying home and no end to the pandemic in sight, comedians began to adapt and started to take a lot of their content online.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lebanese Weight Watchers.
So the podcast with Caesar started around March. Like as soon as everything was closed down, Caesar and I at 2 a.m. decided to start a live stream on Facebook.
It was inevitable when everyone got locked up that people would start going to the internet and trying to produce more content and stuff. And in a lot of ways, I think it's great, but there has been a bloating from the time the pandemic started. Like everyone's kind of starting a show, and I did notice that.
Citizens, return to your homes. Quarantine has begun.
The Toronto Comedy Podcast presents Quarantined with Ben Bankus.
But I was pretty ready for what I thought was going to happen. I assumed that it was going to be for a long time. I assumed that it was going to be bad. So my first reaction was I changed my podcast from the Toronto Comedy Podcast to Toronto Comedy Podcast presents Quarantined. I thought this was going to last maybe a month, maybe 2 months.
It is the ultimate episode, I suppose, if you will, of this thing we've been doing for 4 months now. Yeah, 4 months almost to the day. Show's 70, believe it or not.
Right here? Oh, wow. That's way closer than usual. I mean, you have to adapt, right? This isn't the same as comedy, but it's comparable. I still get to get my rant off, myself. Like on the show I do, the Facebook Live show we did 70 episodes during the first phase one, basically. Phase two, like from March to July, we did 70 shows.
It's Thursday, July 16th, and as I said, it's a bit of a bittersweet moment. It's stupid. It wouldn't be. It's bitter because I'm Trevor, and I'm almost always bitter about something. And it's sweet because I can't stop drinking Fresca. No, I'm actually off the Fresca. I'm getting so straight edge now. I mean,
Trevor Thompson had his pandemic show, so I started contributing to that, and there was a couple of guys that had some online sort of writing contests and competitions going on, so I got involved in that.
I've done some cool stuff online with Tim Riel had me on his game show, which is like they take a board game and they've adapted it into like a live game show, and that was a complete blast.
If you're in the lead, you're probably going at like
Yeah,
you know,
running
doing a podcast, I really do find it that electric. It's just as exciting to me, like talking to someone, especially if it's someone I don't know well, and getting to know like this whole new, brand new human being, and like learning all about their life experiences that have shaped them into the person that they are now that I'm chatting with. You know, I just find that really exhilarating. So, and no word of lie. But going to a show, especially if I'm in the audience, that's like a roller coaster ride because it's explosive. And I say in the audience because then I'm free of concern. I know I don't have to go perform that night, so I can just kind of revel in it a lot more.
I mean, you have those comedians who've pivoted to digital sketches, TikTok, whatever you want to call it. I mean, some people are doing Zoom stand-up, but that's not, a personal opinion, that's not stand-up comedy.
If there's a pandemic raging and Zoom shows are fine. If they put laughers, in Zoom comedy show parlance, laughers is when you have a select group of people that know not to have a dog barking or know not to be going like this in the background because the mic picks up everything, and they just watch and laugh and don't heckle. If you have like 5 of those people, and say the audience is like 100 people, virtual people, but there's 5 laughers, you can still get the feeling of a crappy bar show.
I just wanted to get a gauge of the room because I did enjoy, it's been a while now, I did enjoy all of this. And man, you want to talk about a challenge, trying to get 49 people on their webcams, literally right across the country, and I'm this large, like I'm just the size of a postage stamp. You know, trying to get 50 people to come with you on a journey of enjoying themselves when they're all in their basements or living rooms or sewing rooms. That is a very different energy. You know, it's a very different challenge for sure.
For example, I'm a big sports fan, and I went out on the first date recently, and I told the woman,
if there's no laughers, I'd rather, like, it's really terrible. It just feels like you're talking into a void. It feels like you're bombing because you are bombing.
And you also have to tell 49 strangers that you have to prepare them for how weird they're going to feel.
Laughter is very contagious, and if you're not hearing the person beside you laugh, it's almost hard for you to laugh because laughter is a collaborative thing.
They say it's 30 times more likely you are to laugh at something funny that you see on TV if somebody's laughing beside you. And so you take that number and you multiply it over and over again. When you're in a room full of people laughing, you may not even realize that something funny has happened until the person laughs behind you and you're like, oh yes, that is amusing. I'm amused by that. So that's gone.
I also love that I don't have to commute. I love that I don't have to stay overnight anywhere. I can literally just, I'm wearing sweatpants right now, you know, like on my, like my shirt is normal, but like I can be kind of a slob, like, and just wear sweatpants and who would know, you know what I mean? Like, and I like that aspect of it.
Once I finally did decide to adapt and start doing Zoom interviews, I really benefited from it, I think, because I was able to talk to people that probably wouldn't have been coming to Ottawa anytime soon. People like Fred Penner, who I believe is out in BC, Biff Naked in Toronto, same Hal and Joanne from Body Break. They're somewhere around Toronto in their cottage.
So we had been in lockdown for like 2 full months, and I started feeling affected by it. Like, I was fortunate that I have a full-time job that I was able to keep working from home, but the isolation and not being able to perform was really getting to me. And I remember one day I just like hit the wall, and I was just really upset. Like, my mental health had really taken a toll, and I remember thinking to myself, like, what changed? Other than, you know, some potential virus that could kill us. You know, other than that, like, what changed? And it was just performing. So, hi everyone, welcome back. This is season 2, episode 7 of Shooting the Breeze. And tonight my guest is Pierre Brault. And Pierre is an award-winning actor, writer, teacher, and comic. And we met, my very first guest in May was Carla Collins. And she's a personal friend, but she's a well-known Canadian comic. And I met her in Toronto, and we became friends. And she lives in California now. And I just asked her, I said, hey, can I interview you on this thing I'm doing, just to like pick your brain and talk about comedy. And she was sure. And so we set up a date and a time, and we did it over Zoom, and it was a lot of fun.
As much as we complain about not having live shows and having to do online, it is an opportunity to feed other audiences. So I've worked with comics from all over the world, and been able to do US shows without having to worry about a visa or a plane ticket. So there's kind of that trade-off, right? So there is that opportunity to grow your base beyond your local market.
Live streaming is a different situation. I think one of the things COVID is going to do is it's going to legitimize live streaming for comedy, because look, prior to COVID, if you lived in a small town, or if you had young kids and you couldn't go out, or you were older and you didn't want to go out, it was very difficult to see any live comedy. But now with live streaming, it's the experience still, but you can watch it at home. And it's the same experience because it has an audience. But you can't live stream, and I've seen people try, you can't live stream anything that doesn't have an audience. It still is that hollow experience. But when we get back to doing shows in clubs with an audience, I think we're going to go after live streaming in a big way.
Hey everyone, I'm Butcher performing in an empty theater on Zoom here. This is amazing. It's like performing at an open mic, except with more people.
I'm wearing my mask because I'm a good person.
I want to kill everybody's grandmother.
You know, comedy, it will become this now. Like on Sundays, I do my Sunday live show once every 2 weeks on Facebook Live that gets a lot of views, and people watch that just to keep in contact with the fans and stuff, because you can't tour as much as you want to anymore. You know, I mean, it's just for now.
So comics at 3 minutes 30 seconds, Wilson is going to appear, and when your time is up, Wilson is going to fall down.
Cities all across the country continue to go in and out of lockdown, and travel restrictions are in place for several provinces and the United States. After months of little to no work, comedians begin to feel the financial hardships of the pandemic.
So one of the things that has left us in the pandemic is, how do we as performers perform? I mean, that's kind of what we do. It's my living. And I go from doing 100 plus performances a year to 0. It has a significant effect on one's bank account.
You know, the impact was obviously immediate, and, you know, not being able to tour, not being able to do a whole bunch of things was like, basically, yeah, you have no income.
You know, it's more of a company loss than an individual personal loss. But, you know, we probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $100,000, I would say, has been lost by this in this year.
You know, when we were open during the summer months, and we had a limit of 50 people in the club, it wasn't like we were making any money. Nobody's making any money with 50 people. You can't. So that's a problem. And we had to lower our pay scales for the comics because otherwise we couldn't open. And there were all kinds of ripple effects. So, you know, we have to be open in a way that we can put, you know, 2/3 of the audience into the clubs before you can say that it's back to some kind of health.
There was House of Comedy, which I headlined one weekend, and that was fun, but that was limited. YUK'S they sold the building. There was no YUK'S in Vancouver. So they're just a number of open mics, and they were all socially distanced. So it was hard, even as a headline comic, to make much money, but it was still better than nothing. And then come later fall, you feel like, man, I long for the days of summer when I was complaining about before, because then I couldn't even street perform. I couldn't even do comedy. So that's when a second wave kind of thing, that's when it really started hitting harder.
You know, when your Facebook feed is full of comics and the pandemic strikes, and you just see statuses like, well, I just deleted 3 months worth of my schedule. Like, wow, that's tough. You know, and you see like just show after show after show, canceled. Man, it was just brutal.
We're not recognized as an art form. So we don't qualify for grants or bursaries or funding, which is bullshit. And Sandra Battaglini, like a minute ago, tried to start the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comedians to lobby for comedians to get it recognized as an art form in Canada.
Because comedians have not qualified for grants, we've not really been involved in that system. I was just talking to an artist the other day that she was able to just show the Toronto Arts Council, hey, look, I had this, she was commissioned to do an arts piece, an art piece. She's a painter, and she had the contract or whatever, and they gave her $1,000.
When you're a comic, I mean, you're not going to be respected by, these people. You're just not. And, they look towards you as being, sort of in the cheap side of show business, which destroys me. Stand-up comedy, standing there and making a room full of strangers laugh, is the hardest thing to do, period. How dare you sit there and wonder if it's an art form or not? Are you going to try? Are they trying to shut down stand-up? Let's do that. Let's not have people say what they really think anymore.
And yes, we are very disappointed that even as something as dire as a pandemic, that the minister still refuses to acknowledge comedy.
They never got that one.
It's probably the most underrated, undervalued art form that we have in this country. I think that it's an opportunity for someone to get up on stage and say whatever they want with nobody telling them they can or can't. And you can like it or you can not like it, but it's raw, and it's always, you come to work and you're going to see something different every single night, and that's what makes it exciting.
Nothing kills my libido harder than commitment. And usually the escorts commit suicide. Do you know how embarrassing it is to come to an escort's funeral with a new escort?
The Minister of Heritage, Stephen Guilbeault, announces the $500 million and doesn't mention comedy. And I'm like, it was just, I'm like, seriously? And then they do a second round of announcements and they don't answer, they don't mention comedy again.
For me, an art form is something that conveys an emotion. So it could be music, art, painting, a joke, a spoken word. It's nonsense that if I were to do a one-man show and say it's a theater piece, I can get funding. But if I say it's stand-up comedy, I don't get funding. It's the exact same thing. The logical thing then is, okay, I'll call it theater, and now I can get money.
And then also people were like, where can we donate to comedians, right? So we're like, well, we don't know. And then we started talking about a fund. And then Derek Forgy contacts me and says, hey, I'm doing a fundraiser. I'd like, where can I direct people?
The original idea was that this would just be for my birthday. It would be one day, 10-hour talk show. We'll go for 10 hours. I'll have a bunch of comedians chime in, do a set. We'll talk about what's happening, and then that'll be the end of it. And then we'll see where it goes. And then we aligned closer with Cask, and before we knew it, the thing took off, and people got wind of it. I can't do this. We're getting full-on Scotty from Star Trek. I can't do it. You're demanding too much of me. So, and then once we ended that, Just for Laughs got a hold of it, and Sirius XM Radio got a hold of it, and Russell Peters and K. Trevor Wilson. And before we knew it, all that goodwill just started turning into dollars, which was nice. We ended up with about $33,000. Like, I wanted to make $1,000 in one day. That was kind of what I wanted. And then when it started taking off, we're like, do you think we could ask for 10? And we're like, yeah, we can ask for 10. And 10 turned into 33,000, which was pretty great. Who likes good news?
Me!
I don't know who they are. Back on March 29th, we kicked off a little GoFundMe campaign in conjunction with the Canadian Association for Stand-Up Comics. And in our little 10-hour telethon here from the 10-Minute Talk Show studios, we made almost $1,000 that day, which was pretty nice to support comedians. And we were excited about that. But imagine how we feel now that we're just about to pass a threshold of $15,000, friend. Yeah! Yeah, that's nice. That feels good. Hot damn.
Cast distributed over $31,000 during the pandemic, which is unprecedented, and also revealed another hole in our industry, which is there is no fund for emergency relief.
The comedy community is so accustomed to being paid poorly or being paid nothing that a lot of people had guilt about getting this money. They're like, oh my God, what should I do? I feel like I should be, this is $500, but I didn't do anything. And we're like, it's okay. People want you to have this. And so what some comics did is, because they had like Canadian comedian guilt, they just put a show on and paid everybody.
Comics are really good at helping each other. One of the great things about being in comedy is people help each other because it's like really hard.
I believe comedians are some of the nicest people, most sensitive and smartest people I've met. And this goes to you right across the board, not just Canadian. I don't know if it's because part of our job is analyzing the human condition. It just gives us more empathy or more compassion. I don't know, but I really do think comedians are some of the nicest people I have met.
Have a conversation with Trevor. Can you keep your voice down?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Was that real? No. Oh my God.
When you decide to go in comedy, you're like your brain is the opposite of somebody who wants to work for the government.
It's the most, I mean, I don't know if this is side commentary in my life or is this a cause or effect thing, but it's pretty much the most important thing in my life. Like I've sacrificed a lot, so I'm kind of at the point now where like you can't quit now. It's like I'm stubborn, I don't know. Like a sane person probably would have quit by now, and had a house in Canada and 2 kids. And
I mean, there's nothing about it that, somebody would look at and be like, yeah, that seems like the life I would want. It's almost an addiction. It's almost like once you've been on the stage, you've got that taste of it.
Comedy is like life. It's like blood. It's like the spirit. Without comedy, everything's just dark and gray. It brings color. It brings people together.
You're a crazy dreamer and you want instability. You thrive off instability, and you don't want to know what your future is. Knowing what my future is very depressing to me. If I know that I'm gonna have a job, have a pension, I'm gonna buy a house, have kids, and then I'm gonna watch them grow up and then I'm gonna die. Ever since I was a kid, that made me like want to commit suicide, that thought.
Amateur, oh no, this is worse than amateur. See, the thing you guys don't know is amateur night is curated. They pick the best amateurs, and what you get to see is what's fucking left.
Once you catch the bug, you're not going away. I mean, I know at least 100 kids in this town who aren't going away. This is not going to discourage them. They love it so much. And once you've done it a couple of times, you're hooked.
Because you really have to be like kind of insane to pursue this. And my rationality is that as long as I just keep doing it with less people in, I'll be way stronger once things kick back with 100 people in a room and all that.
What it proves is no matter what they do, someone's going to pick up a microphone and stand in front of people and talk to them and try to get laughs. It's not going to go away. They're not going to kill it. It can't die.
This is where addiction stories happen. This is like rock bottoms. Put your hands together for JP for now.
210 degrees, or even hotter, I forget.
Well, we didn't really know what to do, so we talked to the owner, and he wanted to keep the show going, which is awesome from him. So we were just like kind of trying to figure out ways. Like we just kind of walked around being like, okay, so we got a patio situation that we might be able to work with here, because they didn't have a patio at all to begin with. So it's kind of funny because now I think we got a pretty good thing going on, but we're going to be going back inside hopefully within the next couple weeks. So
like This, I just want this open. There's a guy sleeping in here.
We do this backyard show every pandemic. Last one was in 1918. Took a little break, but we're back, baby. We're back. Yeah, full strength. All right.
But at this point in time, when everybody is going well, the only way we can do a show is in this field, and you got to stand on this garbage can because it's the only way that people can see you over the corn stalks. Do it, because if it's the only comedy you can do, it's the most important thing. You have to do it.
Hey everybody, I'm Scott Brown. I'm JF Frenette. Thank you so much for watching our film Comedy-19, The Last Laugh. If you're watching this in the year 2031, please disregard this message, but if we're still in the middle of a pandemic, as comedians ourselves, comedy is one of the most important things in our lives, as it is for millions of people everywhere. Just imagine how bland and dry life would be if stand-up comedy were to disappear. COVID-19's been around for a year now, and you can imagine how devastating it's been for comics who rely on performing to earn a living. That's why we have teamed up with YUK'S to bring you the Canadian Comic Relief Fund, an initiative to raise money and offer relief for Canadian comics all over the country. We're asking for your support. By making a donation today, you'll be helping Canadian comics and comedy writers keep doing what they do best, making us laugh. So let's keep Canada laughing, everybody. Thanks for your help and keep supporting your local comedy scene.